Today, he is the only Hong Kong business tycoon who is not pro-Beijing. He is an outspoken advocate of democracy for China, and in particular for the rights of abused Christians. He has been a strong supporter of Hong Kong's pan-democrats. So welcome. What I thought we would do today is to have a conversation, just the two of us, for a few minutes, and then what we'll do is we'll open up the floor to questions from the audience as well. But first, maybe we'll just start with, if we can go back in time to the handover in 1997. That was obviously, that's a big moment for us to be looking back on. What did you see signs early on? What's the evolution of China's encroachment onto Hong Kong? Obviously, you were supposed to have two systems, one country. Was that actually a practice, or was that lip service? And why is it that we've gotten to this point of tension?
I think initially it was a very good intention of the Chinese. They intervened very little, to be honest, up until they see that we had the guts to resist them. Like in 2014, they introduced the Bill 23, which is tightening the control of Hong Kong's freedom. We had over 500,000 people went out and demonstrate, and they withdrew the bill. After they withdrew the bill, they concentrate very hard on supporting those pro-establishment legislators and got a lot of more votes and kicked out some of the pan-Democrats. So you can see that every movement that they back off, they actually come back and squeeze harder and narrow our limit, narrow our limited freedom. So then that came the umbrella movement. After the umbrella, we failed. We got nothing from it after 79 days sitting on the street. After that, they squeezed further, eroding further the Hong Kong's freedom, like disqualify some of the legislator and put some young politician in prison, and banning some of the journalists coming to Hong Kong, or cancel their visa. All that, just every time you resist them, they just come back with more control, squeezing tighter and eroding the rule of law and the freedom we have.
So it sounds like they're clearly hijacking the system in Hong Kong. The idea of squeezing out the people that don't view the world the way that they do, don't have the same objectives. I mean, how have they done that, and what are the kinds of people that they've been installing that have tried to promote the Beijing agenda?
Because we don't have the real democracy. We have a very limited, legislator, are voted by the public. So they have actually, they have control of the legislative council, almost. Half are nominated, another half is elected, because it's elected, they get a lot more resources than the pan-Democrats. So, they got a lot of votes too. They control it. So now this time, the recent resistance movement, as you know, is caused by the extradition law amendment, which is a very vicious conspiracy of undermining Hong Kong's rule of law and human right and freedom. So we use, we were aware of the erosion of our freedom. We still took the freedom we had, the rule of law he had, for granted, until it's threatened, this time by the extradition law amendment. So everybody was very angry. They stood up. We resist. We have 2 million people went out. And then what is amazing this time that changes everything is that the young people has taken up the torch to be leading the movement.
If I could just ask you, just to clarify, the extradition law, we're not concerned about, this is not about murderers who find their way to Hong Kong, right?
No.
I mean, this is deliberately designed in the eyes of the Hong Kong residents to basically send opponents of the regime in Beijing back to the mainland.
Yes.
Right? This is about neutralization of the opponents of the Beijing
Exactly,
regime.
because if the Chinese communists can nab anybody, arrest anybody into their jail, Hong Kong's rule of law is totally finished. Yeah.
Now, you've been obviously a proponent for the independence of Hong Kong.
Not independent.
Or not independence,
No,
not
no.
political independence.
I was
but to have
I
a separate
support the
system.
democratization of Hong Kong.
To have
No.
a separate system.
Yeah.
Now, there are those who would say, well, look, China is moving in the right direction. They're becoming more capitalist with Chinese characteristics, right? This is the sort of thing that we hear is that, well, what's the problem? I mean, in essence, what's the concern that you have about the regime in Beijing? What do they want, and what do you not want them to do in Hong Kong?
Well, people's conception about China becoming, the richer they become, the more liberal they become, which has turned out to be untrue. They have actually becoming more more bellicose, around the, to the labor to the labor countries, and squeezing people's liberty. The control today in China is unprecedented. There was never a dictator had such a total control of the people like what Xi has, because nobody had the electronic devices to know where you are, to recognize you where you go. If you want to, if you say something wrong, you immediately find out that you can't buy a train ticket, you can't buy an air ticket. You are not allowed, in a lot of places, you are not allowed to open a bank account. And if you are a criminal, you go to the theater, in the entrance, they recognize your face and come and arrest you. So this kind of control, no dictator ever had in the past. So that will be a great challenge for Xi when you have an innovation of this total control on people that nobody had. It's very dangerous because you have not built the ability to manage that. You have not built the ability to guard against people's revolt. Because history is trial and error. You can't all of a sudden create something and think that will, because you can have control, that people will subservient to it. So I think this is one of the danger Xi has created for himself.
Now, this is interesting to me because, so you talk about the system that Xi is trying to implement, not only in the mainland, but potentially in Hong Kong and elsewhere. This would seem to undercut his own interests. Right? I mean, Hong Kong's independence, political independence, or the separate system that it has, is a money generator at the end of the day. This is a capital of finance that thrives on free market.
Yep.
So was this an overreach on his part? Does it actually benefit him now that the people have come out and pushed back?
Well, one thing you have to understand of the communists, they're materialists. They only understand things when it hits them. They don't have idea about moral, about people's, feeling, all that. They just just hardcore materialists that, only things counts only when it moves. So when they first introduced the extradition law, I'm sure they did not expect that the money is freeing, business people are moving out, that people are perceiving the rule of law is being undermined, so the foundation of a financial center status is being eroded. Because you don't have rule of law, you can't have a financial center.
Right.
Because where comes the protection? Where comes the mutual trust in a financial institution? Because trust is a very important institution in the financial world. Otherwise, money will not move so fast. So they did not understand it until things happen. But even if Hong Kong just slip away, if Hong Kong people make so much trouble for them politically, they would rather have Hong Kong totally undermined and change. Because we used to be 25% of the economy. Now we are only 2.5%. If the trouble is not worth for the 2.5% of the economy, to hell with it. Why should they care?
Important point. You wrote a fascinating piece in the New York Times not too long ago. And your argument was not actually one about finance. It wasn't about money or what the value of Hong Kong was to the Chinese or how to push back in those ways. But rather you talked about moral force. Can you maybe just explain a little bit about what that idea means to you?
Well, I think for Hong Kong people's resistance, the fight against tyranny is a war of moral force. What do we have except moral force? We don't have guns, we don't have money, we don't have nothing. The only thing we have, we can win and we can attack the vulnerability of the communists is the lack of moral authority. That's the only way we can persist to resist them. And that's, I think, what America has really forgotten how important a weapon they have in their hand, which is the moral authority. A lot of people are saying that, okay, we have a trade deal now with China. Let's not offend them. Let's do it afterwards. This is totally wrong and stupid. If the Chinese wants to talk about trade deal, the moral authority of America is a very strong and big deal chips on the table. This is what they don't have. That's what a big chip that you have in the negotiation against them. If they don't want to talk, nothing matters. If they want to talk, this is what you have that they don't have that you have to use. Because you have to always know that. You have to deal with the communists with strength, not weaknesses. And China needs the world and America more than the world and America need them. Otherwise, they won't talk to you. Why should they talk to you?
So
I think it's about time that America, especially the government, rethink about the very powerful weapon they have in their hand, which is the moral authority they have. I'm sure the administration understands now.
Well, there are a lot of people who would be critical of this administration and perhaps previous administrations of being a bit too transactional, not promoting democracy, not supporting democracy. And I think when we look at especially what's happening in Hong Kong right now, I think it's potentially a missed opportunity. But you have actually had an opportunity over the last couple of days to meet with the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo.
Right.
You've met with Vice President Mike Pence.
Yes.
You've met with a number of senior senators as well.
Meeting them now.
Meeting them today. What are these conversations? I mean, what happens in these conversations? Are you getting a sense that America is ready to commit to supporting Hong Kong? Is this a work in progress?
Well, I think they all agree that. So Hong Kong is fighting a war of the same values as you. It means that we are fighting your war in your enemy camp. We need your support. Without your support, we won't have the wherewithal, morally and materially, to really persist this resistance. Your support is very important. That's why I asked Mr. Pompeo and Vice President, I said, look, say something to encourage the Hong Kong people, especially young people. It's like when Kennedy went to Berlin, he said that I'm a Berliner. How much confidence and hope he gave to the Berliner to face the threat of Soviet Union at that time. We need the same thing. We need the support, we need the confidence, we need the hope, we need to know that America is behind us. And by backing us, the America also showing to the world of their moral authority. Because we are the only place in China, a tiny island in China, which is sharing your values, which is fighting the same war you have with China. If we think that we are starting a Cold War with China today, a Cold War is a war of competing values. And we are on your side, sacrificing our life, our freedom, everything we have, fighting this war in the frontier for you. Should you support us? This is something that America has to know. Not only supporting us, but use your moral authority in this Cold War to win this war. In the beginning, because they have nothing. It's like they are like going to the battle without any weapon, and you have the nuclear weapon. You can finish them in a minute.
We hear a lot about the shift to great power conflict here in this town right now, that we are moving away from wars in the Middle East, and we now need to face challenges coming from Russia to a lesser extent, China to a greater extent. Is the moral support that you're talking about, is that enough? Are there things that America can do beyond just saying that we support you? I mean, for example, we were just in Taiwan recently, and the Taiwanese were watching very intently as protests were erupting in Hong Kong. And they were saying that this could be the beginning of a counter movement. If we can broaden out a little bit to the rest of Asia, what should the U.S. be thinking about here?
I think, of course, the U.S. cannot just say it. You have to show your sincerity, your support with actions. Not like if you send some senators or congressmen to Hong Kong and just to be there, to offer your support physically to the Hong Kong people. You know how much impact you can make? How much more force you can reinforce in our heart, in our mind, to really fight this war? This is something I think that America has to know about it, not just say it.